Well, actually, the wide open nature of the competition started back in the spring, so it certainly didn't. No jobs were won necessarily and nailed down at that point, but the race began then, and it wouldn't be fair to those players who had the best spring to say that we're starting all over again. You know, some did something to kind of stick their neck out in front a little bit at that time, and they certainly get credit for that. But all that does is give them the lead, the head start right now. They'll have to outperform the others, and certainly when you come out of spring, it works both ways. One fella sees them in that circumstance, and then hopefully the other fella says, well, I can see what needs to be done here. If I'm going to catch up, I got to get this done. So that usually brings a lot of energy to the start of camp, but probably with this year's team, with a number of positions being in that circumstance, that's going to be across the board at a lot of spots. Well, our second year here, when we ended up starting 9 first-year players, was very much that way. So really in that respect, that was probably a little bit more extreme than this because those players were just arriving on grounds, whereas most of the guys who are competing for playing time have already been here, and so they've been through some degree of acclimation to the university, to college football, to our systems, all those things. So many of the players who have left over the last 2 years were 4-year players. Okay, that is, they were playing as freshmen and sophomores. So when the next batch of good young players came in, there really wasn't that much opportunity for them. You know, they weren't going to beat out Heath Miller. They weren't going to beat out DeBrickashaw, Ferguson, Lundy, Pierman, and those guys. So there's some players that are either young in age or young in terms of participation who have been here, and now those are kind of the guys who are ready to move up and challenge. So, that's Eugene Monroe and Jeff Fitzgerald and Alex Field and Rashawn Jackson, a little bit more so perhaps than the incoming players. It's very helpful in this circumstance in that, we know about constants and variables. And obviously we have a variable at quarterback. We don't have the constant who's been there for 2 seasons for us. And so that's the variable. That's the new part of the equation. At least the other part of the equation is pretty constant. And those guys have a lot of background in what we're doing, how to make the reads, and plus they've been in all the same meetings with Chris for a long time. They've heard the same things as the passing game was installed. So he ought to be able to depend on some consistency and some constancy from them and count on that fact, and then just be able to concentrate on his own performance. So it certainly is, we'll see how advantageous it is to him, but certainly if it was the other way around, a lot of young players learning the system at the same time Chris is breaking in, that would probably be a pretty shaky deal. Well, he's like the student who's taken all the notes and read all the books, but now he's got to go take the test. The coaches that we were added to bring particular experiences and skills and talents, and so we want to give them responsibilities and tasks that will take advantage of what they brought. It doesn't seem to make sense to take certain skills that guys have and tuck them away in the closet, but he's got extensive background with good running teams. So he brings a background and a knowledge and an ability to stand up and say, look, this is a way that works really well, with an authority to it, that his experience and his successes lend itself to. So that I'm glad you cited him. It's a real good example of a guy who brings specific talents here, and we want to make sure that we take full advantage of what he can bring. This is not a rookie coach. This is not a guy who's breaking in. This is a guy who's had a lot of background in systems similar to ours and a good deal of success. So there hasn't been too much change in our offensive line for 4 years. And now there's a lot of change over the course of 2 seasons. They're all gone. So that's part of it. They had I can remember a lot of guys in here got a lot of stories out of those 5 guys 2 years ago. How they were together for 5 years and kind of the relationship they had and did things together and off the field and kind of the brotherhood of being an offensive lineman. Well, we're starting all over again with that mixture. So that's certainly the chemistry of the offensive line is part of their performance. This offensive line has precious little time together, the different components of it. So the only way to do that is to go out there and play together. So that'll be a work in progress. Good lines have guys like Bart on them. That's why he's in New England today, because Bart's Bart. They see that, they understand that that's a talent. That brings something. They'll make their judgment whether he's got enough of the other things too to be around, but that's part of what they liked about him. It's part of what we liked about him.
Do any of them have that kind of outgoing personality?
I'd say probably, Jeff, that each one of them at this stage is a little bit more outgoing than their predecessor, with the exception, of course, of Bart. Okay, Bart set the standard for being outgoing. But I'd say at this particular stage, Elton was, when Elton was established, Elton kind of came out, but they've all got very good personalities and interesting things to say, and but I'm sure they're not going to charm any of those pass rushers into giving up either. I don't know whether he's lighter than he was in the spring. We tried to get him down so he got used to playing at the same weight he was going to play at this season, but he certainly is lighter than what he played at last season. All right, of course, his role has changed, and he's got more roles and different roles. So his stamina and his endurance is going to be a factor too, not just his ability. We weren't necessarily seeing circumstances last year where he might be on the field for 12, 14, 15 plays in a row and then go in for special teams. He was more of a role player last year. He's got the opportunity to take on a more significant role this year, so that's affected his conditioning and how we've seen his weight and those things. Somebody's going to get it that amount of times. Cedric wants it that many times too. So we'll kind of see how that goes. There's a coaching friend of mine that the story is, and two friends of mine, and one was the head coach and another one was the assistant. And it says this is a true story. And the assistant coach kind of sidled up to the head coach during practice one day and said, "Coach, looks like you got kind of a problem here at running back, sorting out all these running backs, don't you?" And the head coach said to him, "Johnny, that's not my problem." Well, that's kind of the way we are here. I think we have some talented running backs. We're going to have a good ball carrier in there to start the first game and let the competition begin. Well, Chris played in games in his first year, but he had about a 6-week stretch there where he didn't participate because of mono. So he started the season. He played in enough games in the season that it was going to count against him anyway. So when he came back, we went ahead and played him, but it was like a freshman starting all over again. And so he played in a limited capacity. He only played on the nickel. So last year was his first year of, one, of playing the regular defense, and two, of playing all the way through. Chris speaks of how much he learned as a result of doing that. So I think the best thing is to let Chris's words answer the question rather than mine. And he's been speaking to me about just how he really feels like he's got a grasp of it and he's ready to go now. He's been through a season. He sees what his expectations should be and what it takes to reach those. So Chris should be one of our real good players, and very intent to be that, and certainly there's every reason to believe that's going to be the case. I went by one of the meeting rooms last night, actually, I saw some lights on to close up, make sure everything was locked up, and there was Day on about 9 o'clock last night watching tape. And
has he always been that way?
No, he's really matured as a player. Dayon's a young man who really shows the benefits of just being in college and maturing and in all aspects, getting focus, learning to do the things that are necessary to be successful. And he's really done a commendable job with that. And 58 catches is good. I know he's got his sights set on doing a lot of things with his game to improve himself in many areas. Obviously, he's a player who's got long-range aspirations, and he understands that to accomplish that, it's about a lot more than catches. Okay, and here's an important thing, and I have to leave you with this because we got a meeting over here with the players in a couple minutes. But the number of catches that a wide receiver has can be very distracting in terms of his value to a team. Okay, in that if a wide receiver catches 8 balls a game in college, now that's a lot of catches. Okay, that's close to a 100 catch season. If those are the only 100 plays in which he's valuable to the offense, okay, he doesn't really have a very good batting average. And that's what teams look for in receivers. Okay, now you only get but so many opportunities to make a play at that position. Okay, so when the opportunity comes, a player has to be the kind of guy he can make a play at the moment. We're not going to throw 24 balls at the X receiver in the game. Okay, it just doesn't happen that way. There's going to be 8, 9, 10, 7 passes going that direction. So a guy's got to be able to make a play when those occasions come up, or else he's got a very low production game. But even with 7 or 8 catches in a game, if those are his only good plays, if those are the only plays that he's really contributing to the offense, then all the other plays you're playing with 10 guys. Whether it's how he runs his routes in order not only to get himself open, but to get other players open, how he blocks for the running game, okay, all those things. Well, he's been very intent on working on his game in all aspects like that. So whether he catches 45 passes this year or 75 passes this year, Deion's had a great focus and a great work ethic on moving his game along in every aspect of being, I guess the way to say it is, of being a real football player and just not a receiving specialist. He's big, fast, tough, works hard, and he's got a lot of ambition. A lot to like right there.